Okay, so I'm Robert Toombs with the RCA, and we're pleased to have Luc Courchesne, somebody I'm looking forward to learning more about. Met Luc in the Montreal meeting back in, I don't know when that was, a few years back. And I'd like to read a brief introduction in English, and then we'll have Nick Cooper read introduction in French. And we ask, it seems as everybody does have their microphones off, so that's good. And then we'll take questions at the end if people are inclined to ask questions. So based in Montreal, Luc Courchesne was professor of design at University of Montreal from 1989 to 2013. He is a founding member of the Society for Art and Technology in Montreal. He has received significant recognition for his contributions to the arts, most recently the Prix Paul-Émile Bourdois, the Prix de Québec in 2019, and then the Governor General's Award in Visual and Media Arts in 2021, so this year. So thank you, Luc, for joining us, and over to Nick.
Oui, bonsoir. Comme Robert a dit, gardez votre micro en sourdine. C'est dans votre écran Zoom en bas en gauche. Merci. Donc, Luc Courchesne vit et travaille à Montréal. Il était professeur honoraire de design à l'Université de Montréal et membre fondateur de la Société des arts technologiques. Il a reçu des importantes reconnaissances pour ses contributions aux arts, récemment le prix Paul-Émile Bourdois en 2019 et le prix de gouverneur général en art visuel et art médiatique en 2021. Merci d'être ici. C'est à vous, Luc.
Merci beaucoup, Nick et Robert. Écoutez, je vais peut-être parler en français et en anglais. Donc, je ne sais pas qui, I don't know exactly who's there, but maybe I'll go back and forth. If I'm too much on one side, just bring me back. I'm happy to...
Never.
Never what?
We won't bring you back.
No? Okay.
Just do what you want. Just
also, I'm not too good with keeping time. So if I'm too short or too long, please, Robert.
It's not over yet.
Let me know. Let me know. Okay, good.
For sure.
So this is an artist talk. I will just simply tell you about my current projects. The questions that are taking my days and nights. These questions are nothing special. I mean, they are the same questions that humanity had and artists amongst humanity had forever. You know, who are we? Where are we? But the question of who we are and where we are is kind of complicated these days, made complicated by technology. Technology has basically taken us in a kind of space where they are like McLuhan said, they're extensions of ourselves. You know, how would we survive without this little thing? You know, can you think of the number of hours that we are focusing on a very small space like this, immersed in a small screen? So this is part of us. We needed to communicate. We needed to think. We needed to plan our life, to know where we are and everything. So these communication technologies. Now we talk about artificial intelligence, you know, these computers that are able very quickly to make sense of huge amount of data, much better than we as humans can do that. An example of that is the fact that they fed a deep machine learning system, AI system, with all the American literature of the 19th century. And by analyzing the text, the style, they found out that 2 books were game changers. But this is just by analyzing style. One of the book was Huckleberry Finn, and the other I don't remember. But this is the kind of thing that computers and artificial intelligence can do now, that is transforming the way we relate to the world, basically. And it of course it's changing us. So that's this, you know, as an artist, as a creator, somebody who knows that things are emerged from our imagination. I am aware of that, the influence of technology. But what I like to see, what I like to say is that if the same question, if the questions are the same throughout the history of humanity, what dates our questioning is the technology we're using. The technology that Leonardo da Vinci used in his time dates his processes, his investigation. The technology that we have today dates our investigation. So we have to be humble about who we are, because we're dependent on the technology that we have at hand. The toolbox of the artist is highly dated. And so this is, now we talk about technological art, but art was always technological. It's just that the technology changes over time. So I'm not different today than anybody else in the history of art. So the project I'm going to talk about here are how I could manage to understand my toolbox, the tool set I have at hand, and how it helped me to understand these two basic questions, who I am, where I am. For me, this is the basic thing. But I have a préambule, j'ai un préambule, c'est-à-dire qu'il y a certaines œuvres qui sont des expérimentations, comme portrait numéro 1, this one, experimentation that keep haunting us. This project was emerged in 1990 after I had spent 5 or 6 years thinking about Laserdisc, computer control Laserdisc. The Laserdisc is, I have one here, I happen to have one here. This is the ancestor of the CD, a CD-ROM, DVD, and it was to be replacing video cassette, videotapes, VHS or Betamax technologies. That was a medium of creation in the 70s mostly, but it never replaced CDs and DVDs. It was a technology looking for a problem to solve, and the thing that the Laserdisc could do that video could not do or film could not do was to be connected to a computer. So the computer could register the address of 54,000 frames on the surface of a Laserdisc and access it within half a second. So today it's ridiculous. You can access it within a millisecond, but at the time it was fantastic. So the idea of interactive video was challenging me. So what could I do with this fantastic technology? And my idea was that the only way to mask the technology would be to create a portrait of someone. And then I said, if Leonardo da Vinci was alive and he wanted to do Mona Lisa, and he had this in his toolbox, he would create a conversational character. So I approached my friend, Paul Ducharme, and we came up with a project where she would be a fictional character. She would pose in a museum and but instead of just looking at her, you could basically ask her questions. She would turn around, look at you, answer your questions, and from questions to answer, you would develop a relationship with the portrait. So that work was created in 1990, but it kept. Here is an example of the thing. It was at Prime Video in March 1990. So there she is. You select the questions you want to ask her from an imposed set. There's no intelligence there, just like a stupid
Allez-y toujours, ça dépend quoi.
branching tree. For example, like I have a choice, who are you, what do you do here? Do I stand a chance? So you can,
Marie.
Who are you, Marie?
Et vous?
And then you have a limited set of answers, which will steer the conversation one way or another.
Et vous vous intéressez à l'art? Le marché de l'art?
Okay, so the choice is limited, but you can still pick a direction, and
Vous
then
êtes collectionneur. Est-ce que je vous intéresse? Parlez à mon agent.
And that's the end of the conversation.
Maintenant,
that
si vous voulez
conversation.
m'excuser.
and she returns to being a portrait. So that work kept wanting to live. It was exhibited as an installation with, the Macintosh connected to a Laserdisc player in a sort of installation that was not too difficult to travel. But then I was invited because of this project to several exhibitions where I met people who invited me as artists in residence. And one of them was at the ZKM in Karlsruhe in Germany. And they offered to turn the project into a CD-ROM. So we made a CD-ROM of the same project. So 5 years later, it existed in a different format. And then 5 years later, in 2000, the Fondation Langlois in Montreal, and you can access it through my website. This is my artist website, courchesne.net. You pick Explore, and in Explore, you have the portrait one, and it brings you to the online version, and it's still available online. You can converse with that person online, thanks to the Langlois Foundation. And now we have it in 3 languages, French, German, English. And then it kept developing. The latest version is a web VR version where exactly the same branching tree, the same conversation, the same material was remastered to be accessible online, but not as a flat website, but as a space in which you navigate. So you visit an exhibition. This is one of the pieces in the exhibition where you can converse with the character, but also in this exhibition, we have other things, the catalog of the exhibition, a reproduction of an art book I did on another project, some sculptural work I did, which was created in 3D and installed there, an installation I did for Les 100 Jours d'Art Contemporain in 1986 that was never constructed again because it was very expensive to build this circular room where you enter, and inside you're in pitch black, and you can smell the smell of flowers, but you don't see them. But there's a roof where with fresh roses that are suspended, and then you come out, and this installation was an association of time and light. The basic idea that light travels at a certain speed, so everything that we see is in the past. It can be very recent past if it's close to you, but if you look at the sun 8 seconds in the past, or a distant stars millions of years light away. So the idea was to say, okay, the future is dark because it's a space that was not yet reached by light. So I was associating past and light and dark with future to say we need to reconsider the dark not as a negative thing, but as a positive thing, a space of imagination where we're free to imagine our future. So that installation, which was created for Les 100 Jours d'Art Contemporain in 86, was never reproduced. But now with this web VR platform, we can recreate these installations. I did a lot of work on immersion. So this is a virtual panoscope that is in that exhibition. It used to be a physical object, but now it's a virtual one in which we can enter. In the real installation, you have a video of the ocean side playing, but here, of course, it's not running video yet. But I have 3D objects anyway. So this is an exhibition online that you can visit. So just to say that I'm trying to follow what are the possibilities that technology is offering us and try to make use of those to keep following my questions about who I am and where I am. And the questions are more relevant than ever. So that was my introduction. First project, ephemeral ontology. If we are in a virtual, immersive, real-time 3D world, what can we do that we cannot do in a physical exhibition space? For example, and my friend Annette is here following me. With Annette, we did a few, exhibitions together in physical worlds. When you decide to put an object somewhere, it stays there. And if it's a precious object, you project. If it's precious, you protect it with the showcase and the security things. But if it's in a virtual space, you don't need to protect it. You don't need to have something. You don't even need to have a wall to hang it. You just decide it's there and it stays there, and you can visit it the way we visited my online exhibition just a moment ago. So the idea of ephemeral ontology is this thing. It's designed for VR, virtual reality. It could be projected in a dome as well. It does not have to be the head-mounted display. If you happen to have a dome at hand, like we have at the Society for Arts and Technology, that would work. You could do mapping like they do for, you probably heard about these exhibitions at in Montreal, these immersive exhibition on Van Gogh, Klimt. I think they were going to do the Mona Lisa very soon. So you are immersed in a room with art, over-dimensional art. So if that's what you have, it work as well. But in these spaces, you transform the space into a computer screen, and you can play all kinds of things in there. But my favorite medium for now is VR because it's very portable. This is, for example, this installation fits in a suitcase. I can travel with the biggest suitcase you can have on a plane, and the chair folds into parts, and I can go somewhere on an invitation and install this and display these incredible space. And this is an idea of the kind of thing people see in there. So what you see now is what I'm looking at through my head-mounted display. You're following my gaze. So I was inside one of these hemispherical screens watching a spherical video I made at the Tiananmen Square in Beijing. And if I come out of it, as if I flew above it, then I am in an archive of my work, as if I had positioned my my installation or my artworks on a timeline, but this timeline gives the possibility to reposition objects based on different algorithms. Like the first algorithm is a timeline, so every object appears on the date where it was created and installed there. The other algorithm creates a random positioning of the same thing. So it's the same corpus, the same body of assets. Suddenly, it creates another kind of space.
Mais comment on la repente, c'est à soi. Comment on découvre, comment on revient. On a déjà notre préféré. Ça y est. La préférence, c'est l'ordre intime. C'est trier avec ses mains des images qui ne nous appartiennent pas. Se souvenir de souvenirs qu'on n'a pas vécu. Et le jardin secret, jardin partagé. Anticiper le regret. Ce temps qu'on a ici, et parce que c'est terminé, parce que ici rien ne meurt, rien accidentellement. De l'adieu. Adieu. Adieu doit se dire, doit se faire. On part souvent trop vite dans la vie. On voudrait plier le ciel. Pour le ciel ce jour-là, qui était si juste, le ciel si exact. Les photos de famille et les photos historiques, celles qui ont fait le siècle. De tours qui vont tourner, c'est bientôt la mi-septembre.
Yeah. So what we've seen is the way we look at things. When we are somewhere, you look everywhere. It's kind of dizzy watching it, but if you were wearing this thing, you are in a place. You can move forward, backward. You can like walk around, look at things, and this is the kind of visual experience that you would have. And it would not feel as jerky as it feels now, because it would be your decision to move your head left, right, to move forward, backward, and this and that. So for me, as an former exhibition designer and artist interested in space, it's a formidable medium, because suddenly you can load hundreds of assets object, you know, in this case, it's my own work or my own sort of documentation of my life, but it could be yours, it could be anything that that you put in there, and then the framework, it's called the ephemeral ontology framework, organizes this material based on different algorithms. Right now I have 3 algorithms, but I could have, you know, more, 5, 10, 20 generative ones, where the same thing creates a different kind of space that is explorable. So this is what we can do in a virtual space that we cannot do in a physical space. So this is what it looks like. You know, I go there as a photographer because, you know, if I want to boil my practice, my artistic practice down to the basic minimum, I am a photographer. I'm not so interested in drawing a world. I want to just harvest the light, photograph what I see. But suddenly I take my pictures, I put them in there, and they are used to create architectures of information. And I go there as a photographer, and these are the kinds of images I can suddenly create from there. So the way we build these ontologies is very simple. First, you have to have a corpus of data. I mean, I'm talking about how I go about it. I'm using my cell phone and the camera, spherical cameras, better quality spherical video cameras, microphones, 3D objects. I've experimented during the pandemic with photogrammetry. It's like photography, but in 3D. So I took, for example, a feather like this. I would photograph it with my iPhone from many points of views. These are all the pictures I took from it. I upload the picture, all these pictures into a software called Capturing Reality. All these pictures are on the left here. It will calculate automatically the dimensionality of the object. You can remove what you don't want, and eventually you get an object that you export. And this is what it looks like. And then I can upload this 3D object, 3D photography of a feather, into my ephemeral ontology framework. And suddenly it appears there, and I can see it in my collection of objects. And suddenly I'm bringing 3D objects in there on top of sounds, videos, and 2D images. Each object has to have some data attached to it, which will be handles that the algorithm will use to create an architecture. The metadata can be supervised, like it's a human-created metadata. Like you say, okay, this is a picture of a feather, and so on. Or it can be unsupervised. You can have, now you have computer programs or algorithms that will analyze pictures, and they'll say, oh, this picture contains people, it has blue, and it is located in that position. And the metadata will be used by the system to create, by the algorithms to create organization. So right now I have a number of 3 types of as I said, of architecture. A timeline, everything is positioned based on the timestamp. Radio, everything is separated by category of objects. And gallery is random. And the gallery, the random algorithm is the best one because it's always different. It creates these visual accidents that are quite interesting, I find. But this is just the beginning of the project. These are just, I will go quickly over that. These are examples of future algorithms that I would like to develop if I had a bit of budget. Unfortunately, in my medium, I'm not a programmer, so I need to hire people, which are not cheap. So I need to find research money in order to develop some of the things that I will need. But that's sometimes possible in the academic environment. The second project I am working on is project called Apparition, because once you have created these virtual space that can be online or offline, they can be quite lonely. So the idea of well, we've all heard about the metaverse, Mark Zuckerberg, the big boss of Facebook, said recently that he's changing the name of his company to Meta because he wants to be the big boss of the metaverse. Actually, the metaverse already exists. It's the internet and it's the World Wide Web. It's just that the World Wide Web will evolve to go from a 2D environment to a 3D. If you type an address, a URL, like you did to be in this Zoom communication tonight, instead of landing on a flat page with clickable worlds, you will arrive somewhere. And these spaces have to be architected. They have to be designed by architect. But the World Wide Web, the 3D web, actually, as it's called, the open web, is becoming more and more what we are calling the metaverse. But in this web, you don't want to be alone. It has to be a social thing. It's like if we were in normal time tonight, maybe we would meet in Ottawa somewhere, maybe at the National Gallery, and we would have a glass of wine and a bit of cheese, and we would chat, and eventually I would go to the microphone and make this presentation. But now we're doing it online. But what if we could meet virtually in a space like my exhibition? Like this is in the class of Christine Bernier, an art historian at the University of Montreal. Every year in winter, she gives a master studio where she has students designing an exhibition based on an artist corpus. So I was the anointed artist last year. I gave the student, a collection of work, and they came up with this exhibition that I showed you when we started. And this is the scene that we had at the opening of the exhibition in April 2021. So you have the dean of the Department of La Faculté des Arts et des Sciences of the University of Montreal in the center. Christine is the one with the sort of just left from him, les cheveux blonds. I'm standing, I'm the guy with the white hair on the right. So basically all these avatars of students and people who attended the opening. So the idea of populating these immersive virtual worlds is important because this is what we do. What creates humanity is based on socialization. You cannot have these virtual spaces if you cannot socialize there. So socialization is essential, but the problem is that we don't necessarily feel comfortable in appearing in such forms. So for example, the avatars that are representing us in there are so unrealistic that you have to have your name above you so that people know that it's you. So this is an example of different situation. Here you have Alexis Martin and Marc Bélan, who are my actors in an installation called Salon Design, which was created at the Musée d'Art Contemporain in 1996. So the installation is there, they stand there, but they are surrounded by these other visitors. So it's not unlike a virtual exhibition where you would have portraits of people in the same room as actual visitors. So we all inhabit this world where we are represented in all sorts of ways. So the Projet Apparition is about the different forms that we take in a live presence or as portraits, and the possible technology that would be maybe desirable if we are going to spend more time in there. The thing that we are proposing is that to record who we are in 3D and exist as avatar, real-time avatar that look like we look, so that we would be a bit like we are right now with Zoom, like I see Robert, for example, in his studio. I know it's him. It's very flat, his details are small, but I trust it's him, especially if I hear his voice. But I was not sure if it was really him, if he was like just a stick figure. So by recording presence like this and exporting it, then we know that who is around us, we recognize these little things that makes us human, and that would be a thing. But we're far from there, very far, maybe years, 5 years, 10 years, maybe more from that. But that's a project that I think is interesting to explore as a visual artist interested in encounters and presence in these odd spaces. One other project that is connected to that is the Teaport project. It's more like a design project. How could we implement something like that? We need to build what I call teleportation stations, where we can enter and we are recorded by these cameras, and we have controllers to orient ourselves. And it would give, it would be something like this. This is a thing we did with the SAT in 2013. So that's already 8 years ago. It's a quick and dirty prototype of two people communicating in a system like that between Liverpool, that's in Liverpool, in England, with Montreal at the SAT. And these two people are talking to one another in point cloud, and they are co-authoring the space in which they are communicating. So they talk about what time it is, they draw the worlds around them. So that's an example, a prototype of a type of medium that would be interesting. I will go over that. Apparently, this is what they are doing at Facebook or Meta now. Rooms with many, many cameras recording somebody in real time. And with the level of redefinition, that would be very close to a real human being. Anyway, so this is how we are for now, but that's not what I want, or not what we want. Eventually, they suggest we will be able to coexist in the same physical space between physically present people and remotely present people. But this brings me to L'Homme de Vitruve. Vitruve is a Roman architect who lived in 100 years before Christ, I think. And he wrote a treatise on architecture. We're not sure if it was illustrated, but when Leonardo da Vinci read that treatise, he illustrated it. The basic idea of Vitruvius was that architecture has to be scaled based on human proportions. And Leonardo da Vinci defined what he found were human proportions. And this was basically to show a response to Vitruvius' treatise of 1500 years before. I did, without connecting to that, I came up with this drawing where I felt, that I come from a world of visual arts, video, photography, very, very 2D. And I was feeling that my medium had to expand into the third and fourth dimension. So I created this drawing of what would be the position of an observer in a world created by computers. That was in 1984, an XYZ world. And I kept reproducing this image, in all kinds of form. Here is as a print, as a 3D form, and now the 3D in an augmented space. This is at Phyllis Lambert's studio in Montreal. Suddenly, because there is a marker on her floor, she can reproduce this virtual object in the middle of her space. It does not really occupy any physical space, but it's there if you have the right window to look at it. So what is happening very soon is that, this thing which makes you see the sort of virtual object will gradually merge to become a head-mounted display. And this is what Apple is rumored to be introducing in the later part of 2022, an augmented or virtual reality headset that will make it more comfortable to look at these things. Okay, the last project. Robert, are we okay with time? How much time we have now? Yeah, okay. So I was in Vienna this fall for 2 months. just before.
Excuse me, Guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Luc, I had my mic off. We're at 40 minutes, but just take your time.
Yeah, okay. I mean, this is going to be short. I was in Vienna this fall in October and November to do a project. I was an artist in residence by the Museum Cartier and the University of Applied Arts. And I was there to do a project, but I did not have to specify which project, but I came with my ephemeral ontology framework with the plan to document the city through the encounters with artists. So Vienna, if you're familiar with it, you will recognize Saint Stephen, church in the very center. It's by the way, Vienna is a wonderful city. It's fantastic. It's about the size of Montreal or Toronto, more Montreal actually, about 2.5 million people. Incredibly well preserved, incredible nature all around it. It's a city that loves art, loves music, loves artists, an incredible museum, and it loves its contemporary artists. The amount of people that are doing really forward-looking work is just amazing. So my project was to meet these artists and to help me recognize the city. The project is about Vienna. It's called Vienne Chiaroscuro. And it's a project that is trying to discover what is the soul of that city through the eyes of the artists that are currently living there. So it will be done for VR, but VR, as I said, is a immersive real-time 3D expanse, a bit like what I've showed you before with ephemeral ontology. But it can be shown in head-mounted display, but also in domes, or even on your phone or your computer if you swing the world around, because it will be immersive. So it's developing the city. The city has an incredible history from Roman occupation. The Emperor August died in Vienna. It was the oriental frontier of the empire, and up to date, it went through all kinds of incredible historical events, including the two world wars in the 20th century. But it was also the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So a lot of this is still written in the city's, fabric. So if you walk through that city, it's like a bit like Rome. You feel you walk through centuries of history, but it happens to be inhabited by contemporary Viennese people, and the artists all have a kind of a special relationship to the city. So the project, I'm giving you like a very quick synopsis of the project. When you put the head-mounted display on, you will be in a space with a lot of sound, the sound of Viennese cafe. This is the Museum Cafe near the Viennese Socialisation, where Klimt and Schiele and all these like avant-garde artists, rebel artists, created the art organization. By the way, the Viennese Socialisation is one of the oldest artist-run center in the world. It was created by artists around the turn of the 20th century, and it remains an artist center to this point. The board is controlled by artists, and it has artists in residence and contemporary art exhibition. But of course, it also has the Beethoven frieze, the design created by Klimt downstairs. But it remains an artist center, and that's a fantastic thing, I think, that to remember for us members of the RCA, that places like that still exist. Anyway, so you enter in one of the 50-20 cafes. What I would ask an artist is to give me a rendezvous in one of the cafes in Vienna. I would come there with my spherical camera and microphone, and I would record our completely improvised conversation, taking some spherical pictures. eventually ask them to take me to their studio. So we would go from the cafe to their studio. So I would again come to their studio with my recorder and spherical camera, record our conversation about their work. And eventually the conversation evolves toward their map of Vienna, their neighborhood, or their special geography of Vienna. And then we would leave the studio and go in different places in Vienna. So through these encounters with artists, we will discover the city, all kinds of places, mostly secret places that are only accessible once you are invited by someone. So this is a project that I'm hoping to finish by, be far enough this summer to start showing it, next fall. With digital art, the beauty of it is that it's never finished. It can always evolve, especially after you've shown it publicly. If you see things that can be improved, you can improve them. Next time you show it, it's a little bit better. So the project will be ready to show in the fall of 2022, and it will be evolving, still evolving for a few months after that. The last thing I'm presenting you is that one of my regrets with working with technology is that I did not realize it at first, but it's very ephemeral. Technology is very ephemeral. The hardware changes very fast. The operating system are upgraded all the time. Companies that make the software you use, they come and go, they fold, the software evolves and doesn't play anymore on the machines you have. So at first I thought, digital art is forever. It's code, 1 and zeros. It's much easier to restore a digital artwork than it is to restore a 15th century painting on wood, with the worms and everything that can go bad. But we don't know how to do that. We don't have the energy or the budget or the expertise to do that. So digital art is ephemeral. It's like performance. You create a work, you show it on the machines that you created with. It will last for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Eventually, when it fades out of the public eye, then it's stored. If you take it away from storage 5 years later, if you're lucky, the equipment will still run. But if not, if you try to upgrade, to export the exact project on more modern machines, it will not play. You have to remaster, to upgrade. And artists are very often more interested in the next project than on upgrading previous projects. So the result is that all these digital artworks that we created in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s are just like dead hardware in dumps right now, and they're not archived. So I decided to write that my medium would be writing from now on, not from now on, but that it's in parallel. And I took, my project is to take artworks and to write the story of how the ideas emerged, how they developed, where they were shown, and what door it opened for another work. So it's a collection of about 20 little booklets that are assembled into a little cardboard box. It's a self-edition right now, but I'm preparing eventually to submit this to an editor. Not strangely, normally I don't have any artist monographs so far. So, and I never had major exhibitions in museum. I had a lot of collective shows, exhibitions in galleries, but not really a solo exhibition in a major institution. So I decided I would make my own. And this is what the ephemeral ontology framework is about. And I'm also writing about the work because eventually I won't be there anymore. So I want to leave some traces. So that's, I guess, the end of my presentation.
Well, that was great, Luc, and thank you for taking us on a electronic journey through your the highlights of your career. And I'm wondering if we have now 10 people on the call, and we did ask you to mute your microphones, but if you would you be interested in taking questions?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So
I
people,
have time. Yeah.
yeah. So people have to unmute their microphones if they want to ask a question. And I'd like to just start with one question of my own. I remember I was 14 during Expo 67, and my mother used it as a babysitting service to just tell me to go there, you know, and stay out of her hair. So I visited, without knowing what I was getting into, I visited a lot of pavilions. But one that I didn't see was Czechoslovakia, and somebody told me that they had a movie there where people could vote on they would come to a certain time at the movie, and you could vote which way you want the movie to go. And that reminded me a little bit of the first work that you showed. So I was wondering, I know there's a lot of people working in various ways in the media, but did you ever see that yourself?
Yeah, I guess, were you born in 1952, Robert? 54.
Yeah.
Okay, and you were 14. Okay,
Well,
did
I do the math right? Is that the right math?
Yeah, you were probably
13.
13. So
Yeah.
I was 14 or 15. Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw the Czech pavilion, and the theater you're talking about was called the Kine Automat.
Yeah.
And I think it was the work of a Czech artist called Svoboda. But it was a very interesting experience where you sat like in a theater and you could vote. Like the film would play, it would stop, and then you would vote. Would you like the last scene was the phone is ringing. The woman is in her apartment, the phone is ringing. The film stops. Two humans come on stage and they say, okay, would you like her to answer the phone? Yes or no? And you had a yes and no button on your chair, and you voted yes or no. And then the majority won. So if the majority was yes, she answers the phone, the film would resume, and with her answering the phone, and then it would follow up. So it was a kind of a movie that had branching like that. And there were, I think, 8 different endings to the same film. And depending on the branching that people voted for, it would have one of these 8 endings. So that was the Kine Automat concept. It was sort of interesting. It was not mind-blowing. It was interesting. But what blew my mind, though, at Expo 67 was...
But it's analog, though. It's analog, right?
Oh, it was analog, yeah.
Yeah.
It was analog. But what blew my mind was the Cinema 360 in the Telephone Pavilion. It was a panoramic.
Yeah, I saw that.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Because you remember, to see that, you had to be at the gate an hour before opening at 9 and to run, because it was the most popular pavilion of the whole thing. Yeah. Because it gave you a ride through Canada, and you had 100 people standing in this room surrounded by a large screen where I think they recorded with 12 cameras and projected with 12 projectors, and you had a completely cylindrical panorama of a journey through Canada, and that was really spectacular. And when I saw that,
and the horses coming and running, or buffalo or something coming running right over you. Eh?
Exactly, and flying over the cities and things like that. So for me, I think I was 14 at the time. It was like, okay, in my lifetime, this is going to be cinema. But it was not like that. It took a long, because what I did not know at the time is it was really expensive to produce. Actually, the Russians, I think before the one that we had at Expo was developed by Disney and the NFB. But the Russian had one running nonstop in Czechoslovakia, I think, throughout this time. But it was very rare to see this sort of experience. But when computers became multimedia in the 90s, with the capacity to show like images in color, Apple came with QuickTime VR, which allowed you to take these 360 panorama and to display them on your screen. And at the time, you scroll the image to left and right, as if you're stable, but the world can be shifting around you. Where now the new paradigm is that the virtual world is stable, like the physical world is stable, and you are turning around. So that's the new thing. But anyway, so it was made a big effect on me, this Expo 67 cylindrical cinema.
Now, I'm wondering if I could ask more questions, but does anybody else? Udo, I see your mic is turned off. Do you have a question?
Yeah, yes, indeed. I have a question, and thank you, Luc, for the talk. It's the second time I hear you. The first time it was myself and David Gibson who invited you to the SGD conference,
really? Yeah.
2011.
Oh, yeah.
So it's wonderful to see you again. My question is, you deal with really existential questions, who I am and where I am. These are fundamental questions, especially in our world with the artificial intelligence and VR and where it blends the reality with the fiction. And when I see your work through the time, it's always fascinating, but it always puzzles me at the end where it's going. And I'm wondering your intention of your work. Do you want to warn us of what is coming, or do you want to show us the options, or what is the intention of your work for the audience?
Yeah, my problem is that I have no intention. I'm just curious to see what happens if, I try something. And I'm the first spectator of the thing. So if you imagine that objects are floating around you and that you can travel through them, I don't know what I will think. I just do it just to be able to experience it. I'm interested in the experience, and I go in the experience without expectation. The only thing I know is that since we are moving more and more in these mediated realities that are offered to us by the technology that are invading, our lives more and more, I know that I want to remain who I am, stay myself. I don't want to lose myself there. I don't want to lose the beauty of my five senses and the amazement that you have to see how light moves through space and this and that. So I'm one of the things that I do, for example, if I create this ephemeral ontology framework, I'm uneasy with the fact that it's lonely. So I want them to be inhabited. So how can I do that? And I explore ways to do that. So I create these experiences, go there, find the problem, and work on the problem. I don't have any message. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I'm just answering my curiosity about where these mediated technology, where is the mediated world that technology create is taking me, and how can I remain who I am in there? So yeah, my message would be, how can I go there as an explorer without losing my bearings as a human? But I don't have an answer, I'm looking for the answer. I'm really interested in the concept of the sublime, Edmund Burke's concept of the sublime. Sublime is something that is beyond beauty. The beauty is something that suddenly interests us in our environment. You see something, it can be a person, it can be a light, a reflection, it can be an object, it can be, I don't know. Suddenly you see that, and it takes you away from your stream of thoughts and helps you pay attention to one thing for a reason. Maybe there is an answer to a question you have there, you don't know. It takes you from an unconscious experience of life to something more conscious. But the sublime is something that does that, but goes beyond that. It's sort of threatening. It says, okay, things are not working anymore. There's something dangerous there. There's something that is challenging the comfort of your system. And I'm hoping, in a way, when I make these technological experiments, that I will be exposed to something that challenges my system, that is sublime in that sense. But I don't know what it will be. I don't know what I will make of it either. You know, I'm just a human confronted with a big monster, in fact, something that nobody controls and that is sort of invading our life. And how do you go about that? So, but I'm hoping that, I'm not sure if it's possible, but I'm hoping that through this, we develop enough mastery to create something that survived the means, the technology that it took to exist. And in that sense, the first project I showed, Portrait One, which I made in 1990, very naively, you know, thinking, oh, it would be cool to be able to have a conversation with a portrait. So, and I did that, and that project doesn't want to die. It's always it reincarnates itself almost, you know, without me. So that's a luck I had, that, you know, in these exploration, there is something I made that exists on its own and that keeps wanting to live. I don't know if I did any other work that has this quality. The landscapes are very interesting. They're very engaging. When you enter there, you know, you are somewhere, you can move in space. There is an emotion there, but it's not a sublime emotion. It's not something that throw me off completely. But I'm still hopeful that it might happen at one point. Like Turner, for example, the painter, you know, Turner for me is sublime, because 100 years after he created these works, you still look at them, you know, with an incredible awe. It's beyond, you know, experience. It is sublime. And I haven't seen many works like that. Turner is my favorite artist. I like James Turrell also. The way he works with light, it's very soft. It's not completely challenging, but it creates the sort of experience of space that where I really, you know, I have big questions. You know, it talks to something fundamental in me. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's a very good question. You know, the real answer is I don't know what I mean by this. I just want to create a context in which I learn from experience.
I'm wondering if we, Udo, you could ask another question, but if you'd like, if we can't get anybody else, but I'm wondering if anybody else might have a question. I know we still have Marianne Barkos and Leslie, Eric, and Annette, Steve. Do any of you have any questions that you'd like to ask Luc? No. One question that I was thinking of was it is a real issue, the archiving of historic digital materials. I remember reading two things that were interesting. One was that at the end of the time when they had the space shuttle, they were going onto eBay to buy chips that were no longer being manufactured, which seems kind of ironic, you know, that they don't have the workflow working properly for their technology. And also that for some of the moon missions, all the documentation that they accumulated, they still haven't looked at it all, and now they don't have the readers or whatever, they're obsolete. But I guess you can have people restoring those technologies, but it's like restoring an old car or something. I mean, it's a lot of work to recycle, you know, antiquated technology.
Yeah, this is why writing is a beautiful medium, I think, because it can be preserved in so many ways. But is it worth preserving things? I think, yeah, I think that it's what a privilege to be alive, you know, for a number of years. In my case, so far it's 69. So what do I make of it? You know, I'm a witness to things. I see the world from a unique point of view, and I want to testify on it. So being a photographer is very practical, because you can say, okay, I will record what I see. And but I'm a photographer with extra stuff in my toolbox. I can stage my photography differently than how I would do it in a gallery, for example. So I can, but my galleries are just virtual. They're not they're not just physical. They're virtual. So but it's very analogous to showing in a gallery, except that for now there's very few people see the thing because we're still very early in this immersive technology. But I'm thinking maybe very soon. I'm thinking of people who are in their, I'm teaching right now to people who are in the 20 years old. So for them, they have a whole career in front of them. So they have to know these things because for them, it will be sorry, a real medium. Yeah, I'm teaching at 2 architects in McGill right now. The students are like young architects. And when they see that architecture can be made of atoms or bits, you know, and it's pretty much the same thing because a building made of concrete and lumber and glass can be inhabited in a same way now that a space, virtual space made of bits can be also inhabited. So one of the things that I challenge them with is how do you go from one to the other? How do you transition from physical to virtual seamlessly without giving the impression that it's 2 different realities? There's one reality which is made of folds, you know, physical and virtual folds are more integrated now than they were. And we're there already, you know, when you take your phone, you know, and you look at your email, and you're basically in a different, a world of a different nature when you focus on that small screen. But this small screen is not ergonomic. It's not made for humans. So that's why it has to expand. But how do we integrate the 2 things? Now they're talking about augmented reality, where you basically are in the physical space, like in a city or in your home, and you can tune into additional information. We already do that when you listen to the radio at home. You are adding information to your living space when you're turning on the TV set. But it's like this information, the radio and the TV, will be integrated differently in your environment now. But how do you design this? And that's the work of artists, architects and designers, but also of artists maybe, if we are to remain critical about that, if we want to live in a world which is not only designed by the industry.
Udo, do you have a follow-up question?
Well, no, I only experience in my short professional life the same issue of that all your storage of digital data is so much is lost because your storage on a floppy disk and then you can't read it anymore, and then you have a hard drive, you can read it anymore after a couple of years, and it's terrible. And I also go more the traditional way, have it physically somewhere. That can also rot away, but it's still longer lasting than the digital.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
It's really terrible.
Well, I remember complaining about that I in my new website, which I did a redesign, I wasn't able to. I took the old website down because I used the same URL, and then I said, well, nobody will ever be able to see that again. And then people were going, oh yes, they can go to the Wayback Machine. You know, apparently there's this Wayback Machine that you can go from Back to the Future, I guess. And so I found the Wayback Machine, and I had like 3 pages of the website, you know, and they were with the wrong font and everything. So it was totally not really acceptable, you know, as documentation. Yeah. So we're having, but you have like, you know, the first, you know, you got more stuff from the first 50 years of print probably from Gutenberg's time still existing now than what you have from 20 years ago on the web.
Yeah.
Wow, maybe not, but you know.
There is a wonderful Japanese artist, Ryoji Ikeda. I don't know if you know him. He's quite young. I think he's in 40s and 50 years old. A performer, visual artist, incredible, a fantastic artist. And he was interviewed at one point here at the Phi Center in Montreal, the Centre Phi. And somebody asked him the question, you know, what do you do about preserving your artwork? He said, I don't care about it, because anyway, we're all gonna die. The sun will burn up. There will be a point where, you know, Mozart, Beethoven will not be heard anymore. There will be nobody to listen to their work. So we have to live the moment. We have to create, and the people who see it, and then move on to something else. And I thought it was, I mean, a difficult thing to conceive or to accept, but maybe it's very realistic that, you know, we have to say, okay, we're into an ephemeral medium, and we have to accept it and be modest about it, and just work for who happens to be around us, be generous, contribute, you know, share, connect, and then die in peace and let other people follow up.
Well, maybe we should call that the end of the Zoom. We had gave people chances to speak, and people who wanted to did. And I'd really like to thank you for the time that you gave to us tonight, Luc.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation, Robert.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to our next meeting of the Academy.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.